Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I posted my last video, but I have not been doing too well in the Gold Battle League over the past couple of weeks, so I didn't really have anything interesting to share with you guys. I kind of dropped from the 2600s to the 2400s in Great League and in Ultra League. But then I kind of regained some of those points towards the end of Ultra League, so unfortunately I couldn't share that team with you guys because I literally regained my points on the last day. I am saving that team for a future video if it continues to work out because I was using Regidrago and I was able to regain most of my elo with Regidrago in Ultra League. But then Sunshine Cup came along and I have been having so much fun in the Sunshine Cup. Today, I managed to reach experts with Shadow Blaziken and Shadow Pidgeot. I am having so much fun with that team, but first I wanted to share this team with you guys because this one did help me climb yesterday, but unfortunately today it wasn't working out as well for me. It is week to a lot of Pokemon, so the team that is on the screen right now is Shadow Swampert on the lead with Credilli on the safe swap and Magcargo in the back. But obviously that team is ABA weak to Ferrothorn. I was struggling against Pokemon like Golurk. I was struggling against Blaziken. I was also struggling against, I think I was struggling against Pidgeot, which is why I ended up building my own Pidgeot and using that. So I'm just gonna share a few of the battles with this team before we get into the really fun team, which the battles for that are going to be at the end of this video. Okay, in this match, we are up against a Shadow Steelix that is staying in against her Swampert. We do manage to take them out, and then our opponent swaps into a Shadow Quagsire. Okay, this is another reason why I felt like I needed Shadow Pidgeot on my team, because Pidgeot can do well against the Swamperts and the Quagsires, the Mud Boys basically. And I was running Credilli with Acid, which is actually horrible against them because it's going to take forever to reach the Grass Knots and the Water Moves are neutral. However, in that match, my opponent went ahead and top lefted, so we took that win and we didn't get to see what their final Pokemon was. However, in the next match, we're up against a Ferrothorn on the lead. I was going to try to weaken the Ferrothorn with a Hydro Cannon from our Swampert, but our opponent actually ends up shielding it, and then I bring in Credilli anyway, which is still going to get destroyed by this Ferrothorn, but at least I can try to lower its attack. Anyways, our opponent brings in a Swampert for our Credilli. Okay, there you have it. That's why we are struggling with this Credilli. It is not the best answer to Mud Boys when it's running Acid. Maybe if I was running Bullet Seed, I would have had a much better time. But we do manage to take our opponent's Swampert out with a Hydro Cannon from our Swampert, and maybe my opponent was switch-locked here, or their final Pokemon was weak to Magcargo, but we managed to incinerate their Ferrothorn down, and then they go ahead and top left, and we don't get to see their final Pokemon. Okay, now in the next match, we are up against a Swampert on the lead. Again, really struggling against these Swamperts, so I really need to win CMP with my Swampert. Thankfully it does. So I am going to stay in here and just go immediately for the Hydro Cannon as soon as we reach it, but our opponent swaps into an Abomasnow. Okay, I build up to another Hydro Cannon, and then I am going to bring in my Magcargo. Now they do have a Hydro Cannon stored on their Swampert, so they could bring it in here and go for it immediately. They do manage to get 2 Mudshots in, but I am going to bring my own Swampert now, go for a Hydro Cannon, really hoping I can take this out. They shield. Okay, they use their final shield on Swampert, and then they catch the Hydro Cannon on a Credilli of their own. Okay, so I'm going to try to build up as much energy as I can on my own Credilli and try to leave this with enough energy to reach a Grass Knot before my opponent can make it to 2 Hydro Cannons. I still have a shield left, so I'm good. We manage to take their Credilli out, and then I make it to that Grass Knot. This will KO the Swamperts, and we'll take that win. So things could have gotten a little bit dicey there if the Swampert had a little bit more energy on it, but we were fine. On to the next battle. We're up against a Shadow Pidgeot on the lead, which is going to give us such a tough time. I think they can go ahead and double shield here and probably go for a full gust down. But I do manage to catch the air cutter on my Credilli. It doesn't do too much damage, which is okay. And then another Pokemon I was struggling against is Gligar. Gligar was absolutely destroying my entire team because my opponent would just shield it and would be able to do a lot of damage to my Pokemon with the Fury Cutters, the Aerial Aces, and of course the Dig, which will absolutely annihilate our Magcargo. Here, I let the Dig go thinking that my opponent didn't have enough energy for it, but they did. And their final Pokemon is a Diggersby. We're just absolutely getting destroyed here because I'm not going to be able to handle the Pidgeot. They will be able to Fast Move or Swampert down and shield the Hydro Cannon, of course. I don't even have enough health on my Magcargo anymore to survive anything, so we're just going to take the loss here. It is how it is, but this is where I started getting sort of inspired to use Pidgeot. I was starting to recognize how strong it is, and it's really strong against a lot of the Pokemon in this meta. It's a good neutral pick, I would say. Oh, and of course, in the next match, we get a Golurk on the lead, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had Pidgeot, this would absolutely destroy this, wouldn't it? But yeah, we are going to get destroyed by this Golurk in this game. I stay in with Swampert. I manage to reach 2 Hydro Cannons, which of course my opponent ends up double shielding. And then I shield the Shadow Punch on Credilli, shield the Dynamic Punch. Now I have no shields left. My opponent can make it to another Dynamic Punch on either of my 2 Pokemon that are left, which both are going to be taking super effective from the Dynamic Punches. My opponent swaps into a Credilli, and I'm not really sure what to do, so I end up staying in because it's going to hit our Magcargo for super effective with the Rock Tombs, and at this point there's not much I can do because I don't think Magcargo will be able to reach a move against the Golurk. They have a little bit of energy on it. Their final Pokemon is a Magcargo of their own, and here my opponent is just going to go for a Dynamic Punch to take our Magcargo out, and I'm just going to go ahead and top left. And that battle was from another set that I'm not going to show you the entire set of, but we did get a 2-3 in that set, so we did drop a few points, but it's okay because we are going to try to regain them in the next set. So we are up against an Abomasnow on the lead. Again, ABA weak to this Pokemon. I swap into Credilli because at least I can hit for super effective with the Acid, and I go ahead and double shield. And they catch the Rock Tomb on a Quagsire. Are we going to get destroyed in this battle? Usually a Abomasnow on the lead will have 2 Mudboys in the back, so if that is the case, then this is an absolute loss. Also, I did end up changing to my own Shadow Quagsire on the lead because I felt like I needed a little bit or something a little bit more spammy, and Shadow Quagsire is going to be able to make it to the Aqua Tails a little bit faster. So we are running Shadow Quagsire here. Again, I don't recommend the first 2 teams. I like the last team. If you guys want to take a team from this video, take the one with Blaziken and Shadow Pidgeot. Our opponent's final Pokemon is a Bibarel. So I was able to go for a Rock Tomb against a Bibarel and weaken it. They were in Aqua Tail range, so I was able to take them out with an Aqua Tail. And then I still have my Magcargo in the back, so it is a loss for our opponent, but I was able to one-shot them down anyways. Moving on to the next battle. Another Pokemon that was really making me wish I had Pidgeot on the lead. We're up against Sea Beware, which is such an interesting pick, but it destroys my backline. I'm gonna go for an Aqua Tail here. We get a shield from our opponent, and then they swap into a Flygon. Okay, I build up a little bit of energy on the Quagsire before swapping out. If my opponent lets the Grass Knot go, I should be able to handle this Flygon. It's not Shadow, so it's not going to KO. However, we will be able to fast move them down, and then they are going to bring that Beware back in. I could have reached a move, but our opponent is smart. They were counting, so they go for a Stomp to take our Credilli out before we go for a move and take their final shield. And unfortunately for me, their final Pokemon is a Swampert. I go for an Overheat, which does a lot of damage. Yeah, they end up shielding our Aqua Tail from Quagsire, taking our Quagsire out. And if they hadn't had energy on Beware, then I might have had a chance here. Maybe I could have incinerated the Swampert down, but they had a superpower ready to go, so they can take our Magcargo out and take that win. And at this point, I was getting fed up. So you can see me here going through my Pokemon storage, trying to build another team. I was thinking maybe Talonflame lead, but I was like, no, the Mud Boys are just such a big problem for me. I need a Pidgeot, and I didn't have a Shadow Pidgeot. We ended up building one, and it cost us 2 Elite TMs, an Elite Fast TM for the Gust, and an Elite Charge TM for the Air Cutter. So resource-wise, this bird was so expensive, but also so worth it because this is where the fun actually begins. We are up against a Shadow Flygon on the lead, which gets absolutely destroyed by the Gust from this Pidgeot. And we managed to take them out. Obviously, we did have to invest one of our shields. And then our opponent brings in a Furret, which is absolutely going to get destroyed by our Blaziken. They swap out into a Blaziken of their own, which we're able to counter down. And with the Blaziken out of the way, I can come in with Magcargo up against their Furrets. They have no shields left, so we would have destroyed them. So our opponent goes ahead and top left. Now moving on to the next battle, we're up against a Shadow Pidgeot on the lead. I'm really hoping that mine wins CMP. I go for the Air Cutter immediately and get a shield from my opponents. Now, am I going to return the shield? I decide to return it because I'm expecting that my opponent might have a Mud Boy in the back. However, they swap out into a Wigglytuff, which really surprised me because that means that their team is ABA weak to Magcargo. But because we get the Wigglytuff out here, I can now align it to our Magcargo, go for a full Incinerate down, and then our opponent brings in a Swampert, which was expected. Okay, I go for a Rock Tomb, and then I go for an Overheat, which they let go. And then I can come back in here with Pidgeot, take whatever they're going to throw, and then I should be able to counter them down with our Blaziken before they can reach another move. Either way, we had a shield left, so we were safe. And thank goodness they weren't able to get their move off from Pidgeot onto Blaziken. Otherwise, I would have had to give up that final shield. Now on to the next battle. We're up against an entire team that is absolutely going to get wrecked by Pidgeot. We get a Golurk on the lead, and then our opponent swaps out into an Ursaring, which is running Shadow Claw as the fast move. So the fast moves are barely doing any damage to us. I decide to stay in here and double shield the Swifts. And then our opponent brings Golurk back in, which is telling me that whatever their third Pokemon is, it doesn't want to see Pidgeot either. So we managed to reach the Air Cutter before our opponent could reach a Dynamic Punch on Golurk, and their final Pokemon is a Blaziken. So even with energy, it would not have been threatening to our Magcargo because usually the Blazikens are running Blaze Kick and Brave Bird, both which are going to be resisted on Magcargo. So either way, even if my opponent didn't top left, that was going to be a win for us. Now moving on to the next battle, again, we are going to get a lead that is really weak to Pidgeot. We get a Shadow Blaziken, and then our opponent swaps out into a Flygon, which I am going to shield the Dragon Claw from because I'm at the Air Cutter and I could potentially take them out here. Let's see what our opponent decides to do. Okay, they don't want to give up their final shield. They have another really squishy Pokemon on the team, which they probably want to save a shield for, but that shield isn't going to do anything for that Blaziken because we can take them out with a Gust, and then our opponent's final Pokemon is a Ferrothorn, and let's just say with the backline that I have, things are not going to end so well for that Ferrothorn. Anyways, moving on to the next battle, we're up against a Talonflame on the lead. Okay, so I think we do end up struggling against this Talonflame quite a bit. I let Pidgeot go, I don't shield anything on it, and then I bring in my Magcargo. They bring in a Flygon, which is going to be resisting everything from our Magcargo. And I go for an Overheat here, but then for some reason I stay in and I'm like, okay, I am going to hope that Blaziken can take this win for us. Their Talonflame has quite a bit of energy, by the way, so I think they can reach 2 flies, which I am going to have to give up shields for, obviously, because Blaziken is not going to like that. Their final Pokemon is a Credilly, but this Credilly is going to reach a Rock Tomb. And because they reach Rock Tomb, they will be able to get the Fly Off on our Blaziken, which they already have loaded up. And our opponent is going to take this win. Now, things were getting a little bit nerve-wracking here because I needed 3 wins in this set to reach Experts. So moving on to the next battle, we're up against an Abomasnow on the lead, expecting my opponent to have double Mudboys in the back, and unfortunately for me, they are running a Shadow Quagsire with Water Gun, which is so annoying. It is doing so much damage to our Pidgeot, and they even managed to reach another move on the Quagsire, which I thought would be Aqua Tail, so I went ahead and no-shielded it, but it ended up being Stone Edge, which takes our Pidgeot out, and then I go ahead and top left because I'm expecting my opponent to have another Magcargo answer in the back. Alright, now moving on to the next battle, we're up against the Shadow Quagsire on the lead, and thank goodness it's not running Water Gun. That's good for our Pidgeot, but I should have called the Aqua Tail that they threw here. I was thinking of not shielding, but I went ahead and shielded. But good thing for us, they swap into a Talonflame. Okay, Magcargo is going to be resisting everything from this Talonflame. I am going to go for a Rock Tomb, take the Talonflame out, and then our opponent brings the Quagsire back in. Unfortunately, I can't go for the Overheat, which might have been enough to take them out, but I am going to bring Pidgeot back in, go for an Air Cutter, and take my opponent's final shield. Their final Pokemon is an Abomasnow, so as soon as they see our Blaziken, they go ahead and top left, and we get another win. I just need one more win to get to Experts, and it's looking pretty good for us because we are up against a Shadow Marowak on the lead, but I cannot have this Marowak aligned to my backline. Now my opponent swaps into a Dunsparce, which is a little bit tricky for me because it's going to be able to hit for super effective on all of my Pokemon. So I bring in Blaziken and I go ahead and double shield the Drill Runs. And then of course I am expecting my opponent to bring that Marowak back in. I can go for a Blaze Kick. Let's see what my opponent decides to do. They let it go, which is really good for us. And their final Pokemon is a Wigglytuff. Okay, I think if I go for a Rock Tomb on the Marowak, then the Rock Slide from that Marowak will not KO our Pidgeot. So let's see how this goes. I do end up taking another move from the Wigglytuff here, which is not ideal. But either way, we can come out of this with at least one move loaded for the Marowak to take their final shield, and then I can go for the Air Cutter that I have stored on my Pidgeot immediately, take the Marowak out, take that win, and we got enough wins to reach Expert in that set. That is going to be the end of our video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Maybe leave a like, it helps me out so much. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye bye!